Welcome to the premiere of Elevating Stories of Climate Equity. I'm Sylvia Ewing, and I will be your host for this monthly series. Now more than ever, Illinois residents see the connection between weather and their energy costs. During the pandemic and quarantine, our home was our shelter, and heating and cooling our homes can take a big bite out of the family budget. Tonight, we'll hear a variety of perspectives, get the facts from experts, and offer tips for saving money and understanding the policies that can make a difference for all of us. Joining us are Ann Evans, my friend and CEO of Elevate, Ann McKibben, Director of Policy, also at Elevate, Jeremy Bryant, Senior Associate of Community Resources at Elevate, and Sarah Motzkowitz, Deputy Director at Citizens Utility Board, and Illinois State Senator Robert Peters. Plus, we'll take your calls later in the program. Let's get started. Ann, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us for this premiere episode of our occasional series. Ann Evans, I'll start with you. What do you do at Elevate?
Hello, Sylvia. It's wonderful to be with you this evening. I'm Ann Evans. I am Elevate's CEO, and I have the very wonderful honor and pleasure to lead a dedicated team who is working on climate justice and racial justice and towards a world where everyone has healthy, safe, affordable ways to have heat, power, and water in their home, no matter who they are or where they live.
Thank you. I can be behind that. And Ann McKibben, tell us what you do at Elevate.
Hi, Sylvia. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Ann McKibben. I'm Elevate's Policy Director. And as Policy Director, I help our policy staff take the things that we have learned from all of the programs that we run on energy efficiency and solar and workforce development and clean water. And we take the things that we've learned and we try to inject that into the policy discussions here in Illinois.
Well, thank you. There is a lot going on with policy. I'm going to go back to Ann Evans first. So, Ann, tell us about your name change. People may know the organization as Elevate Energy, and there's been a change.
Yeah, there has. Thank you for that question. Elevate is a national nonprofit that's headquartered here in Chicago and really providing services across Illinois and the Midwest and the United States. And we work and run programs that help people save money, be comfortable in their homes, especially as we experience more and more extreme heat and extreme cold, create healthy environments. I want to highlight what you noted, that our homes are really our shelters and where we have to shelter in place during this very long pandemic. And so these programs are even more important now than ever. We changed our name and we're very excited that we are simply Elevate to highlight the intersectionality of all the work that we do, because we do energy efficiency, we do solar, we do healthy homes, we do workforce. One really critical component of our work is that as we're upgrading people's homes, we're putting people to work from BIPOC communities so that they can gain and retain wealth and be more resilient in the future.
Thank you. Ann McKibben, what does Illinois need to prioritize to move our state to a clean and secure energy future? I mean, the theme of our program, after all, is extreme weather and energy costs. What do we need to do?
Yeah, well, there's a variety of things. We have renewable energy industries that were just getting off the mark and now have run into some policy barriers. We need to remove those barriers so that those industries can grow dramatically and employ people, particularly in this time when we've had a lot of people who are out of work. We need to prepare our workforce to take advantage of those new jobs. And we need to work across multiple sectors: transportation, gas, electric, and elsewhere, to reduce our emissions at the same time as we're growing our economic development.
That sounds like a bit of a heavy lift. Can you tell me what CEJA is and what role it might play in that change?
Yeah, sure. The CEJA is what we call the Clean Energy Jobs Act. Of course, why use words when you can just use an acronym? So CEJA. But the Clean Energy Jobs Act is a comprehensive piece of energy legislation. It's the most comprehensive energy legislation and the most equity focused legislation in Springfield right now. And it was put together by the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, which is a wide coalition of over 100 organizations from across the state, from many different sectors, who went out and asked folks, what do you want from your energy, from the energy system that we have here in Illinois? What would help you live a better life? And we tried to put it in CEJA. So it does a variety of things. It does things like improves our gas energy efficiency programs, dramatically expands them. We think that alone will save Illinoisans $700 million a year, just because we use a lot of gas and we've got an opportunity to waste less of it. So it does things like that, electric vehicles. There's a wide variety of issues that are contained in the bill, but we think that a comprehensive approach is really the way to go.
Well, I want to come back to Ann Evans. How does equity look? How does it show up in your ideal version of the world, Ann Evans?
Thank you. Equity to me really means anti-racism, dismantling anti-Blackness, and repairing past harms. And I think that is a long journey that we'll be on for quite some time, given our history. And of course, it's a journey that we have to take as true partners to everyone in the community, so that we can take the moment that we're in, where we have the real joint pandemics of COVID and racism and white supremacy, to transition us to a just economy, a just society, where everyone has access to just home. Everyone has access to home, safety, health, jobs, and the ability to thrive.
Yeah, I know that you throw water in there as well as a right that people have. Ann McKibben, what is the state or the state government and our policies, what are they doing to protect Illinois from the kind of power grid failures that we saw in Texas? And that can be the result of this extreme weather, which we believe is the result of the climate crisis. What can we do?
Yeah, well, luckily, Illinois starts out in a better position than Texas did for a couple of reasons. Our energy system, because of the weather here in the Midwest, is built, designed, and maintained in a way that can accommodate cold weather, where Texas wasn't the case. We're also part of a regional, two regional actually, electric grids. And anytime you've got a bigger grid that spans more space, it provides resilience, because if something happens in one area, the other area can kind of make up the gap. They didn't have that in Texas either. So we're ahead of the game to start. But if we want to stay resilient and we want to build our resilience, which I think we all do, we need a couple of things. First off, of course, as Ann mentioned, we need to address racial inequities in our communities and in the clean energy sector to ensure that we've got opportunities for folks to get those jobs and good paying jobs, to build resilience in our communities. And in our energy system specifically, CEJA creates actually a planning process at our state regulator, which would allow us to have a really good look into what the future holds for our energy systems and look at it to make sure that what comes in the future is going to be reliable, it's going to be reasonably priced, and also that it's going to be clean, which can make us as communities more resilient, not only because of the new job opportunities, but because of just a lack of pollution and the assistance with public health that creates.
Well, I want to stay with you, Ann McKibben. We're about halfway through our time together. It goes so fast. But talk about equity at the core of that legislation, and what does it look like for people to see the clean energy future and solutions to the climate crisis in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's so important. We not only need to see sort of installations of particular like things like solar panels or insulation, energy efficiency projects in every neighborhood across Illinois. We need to make up for historic inequities too. There are some neighborhoods that have been left behind and we need to catch them up as well. So there's a lot of work to be done in the sort of technical installation of electric things and gas things. But there's also a lot of work that needs to be done on the workforce side. As we build these industries, we need to make sure that these industries are diverse, that all workers in Illinois have opportunities in these industries to grow themselves, to get good paying jobs, to have a career path. And that within CEJA at a practical level, what that looks like is a number of programs for workforce development, ensuring that workforce development is happening all over the state and that it's targeted towards the industries that are growing, and it really connects people to jobs. So it's not just we're training folks, but we're training folks and placing them specifically in the industry so that they can thrive.
So I have a question for you. What if someone is what we might call a returning citizen, or you were formerly incarcerated? Is there a place for you in this industry?
Absolutely. We think there absolutely should be. There is a program in CEJA that would specifically train folks who are about to return from the criminal justice system to ensure that they, as soon as they get out, they're ready to go right into a job and make that transition as smooth as possible. That's one program in CEJA. There are others that are just more generalized workforce development programs, but again, with that linkage directly to the jobs at the end. And then there are programs to help small businesses grow and to help those small businesses, once they reach a certain size and they're ready to sort of take off, where they can really hire a lot of people out of their community, to help them sort of bridge that next gap and become what we call prime contractors in the industry. So not only are they taking on the big jobs, but they're hiring other small businesses to help them with it. And
so these are the black and brown
out of their community
contractors who perhaps have been left out in the past. Lots of good stuff here. Ann Evans, what national predictions do you have? We have a new administration, the Biden-Harris administration in Washington. There was a lot of talk about, climate equity, dealing with the wrongs of the past. What do you see in terms of energy policy and help for regular folks?
I see a lot of optimism. I see the climate plan that President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, which actually I want to pause and just say that again, Vice President Kamala Harris, as we celebrate Women's History Month, have put together. They put together a wonderful plan that prioritizes spending and benefits to the people who need it most. People from BIPOC communities that have suffered from disinvestment and loss of wealth for decades and centuries. And so they've made a commitment, which we're calling Justice 40. They've made a commitment that 40% of the investments and 40% of the benefits will go to those communities. So that means the investments in housing, the investments in transportation, the investments in utility bill relief that we all know are so needed right now will go to those communities. So that's a lot to be optimistic for. However, we know that we have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that frontline organizations, environmental justice organizations are at the table making decisions about how the money should be spent in their own communities and getting the direct benefit of this funding. And I don't believe that'll just happen unless we're all at the table being vigilant, making sure that the commitments that were made at the federal level really transfer and really are realized at the local level.
Yeah, we know that very often the people who have money get more money. So we hope to see a change there.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, what excites you about the future? What makes you uh, joyful?
I am really excited about people. I continue to believe in people and communities. And over the last year, I have seen the mutual aid, the folks stepping up to do things they never would have done in the past to help each other. And that includes my team at Elevate, who has stepped up to pivot and help people who who need the help. And I think we started by listening and stepping back and trying to understand what people were experiencing during COVID. And so we heard things like the seniors who have participated in our energy efficiency and water efficiency programs needed help getting to the grocery store because one, we didn't want them to go to the grocery store because of COVID and potential exposure, but their extended networks, their grandchildren who might have driven them to the grocery store in the past are essential workers. And so those safety nets have been stretched and challenged. And it was exciting when our team stepped up and said, you know what, we can help, we can get groceries delivered to folks that need that help. Additionally, I know we're talking about climate change and extreme heat. One of the things that we worried about very early on, it was what's going to happen to folks that don't have air conditioning. They can't go to cooling centers. They can't go to the parks. They can't go to the lakefront. And so we worked hard to make sure that we could help provide air conditioning to people who were in need. And through this kind of work, we're helping people be more resilient to current and future stressors like COVID and like the pandemic. So what excites me, gets me up, makes me do my happy dance in my kitchen is people coming together to solve difficult problems in ways that they never have before.
Thank you. And Ann McKibben, about a minute, what excites you these days?
Yes, I love the way Anne put it. People coming together to solve difficult problems in ways they haven't before. I see that in the policy world too. People who haven't previously worked together, we've maybe agreed with each other and been aligned a little bit, but we haven't really worked hard together and now working hard together to solve problems, have been previously intractable problems like racial inequities and climate change. And so that kind of working together, I would just totally agree. I'm seeing a lot of it in my end too, and it's really exciting.
Well, I'm really excited to have you here for this premiere segment of Elevating Stories of Climate Equity. This is our extreme weather edition. I'm Sylvia Ewing. Full disclosure, I'm a host and producer here, but I'm also director of a lot of communications, marketing, and outreach at Elevate. And I'm thrilled to hear the voices of people who have some positive, important, and factual things to say. So Ann McKibben, Director of Policy, thank you so much, Ann. Ann Evans, our leader, CEO, who cares so much, thank you so much as well. We've got another conversation coming up in just a minute, so thank you too, appreciate you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Earlier, I had the pleasure to talk to State Senator Robert Peters about climate and environmental justice. Let's take a look at our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert Peters. We're so glad that you're here. Tell us about your work, which district you're from, and what's your biggest concern at this moment?
Yeah, so I'm the state senator. It stretches from on the 13th district, which stretches from downtown all the way to the Indiana border along the lakefront. And I think when I think about what I do in my work, it's mainly focused on what does it mean to have real safety and dignity in our communities. And so whether it's talking about climate, environmental justice, or talking about the criminal justice system, or talking about our economy, I think all these things are sort of tied together. And, you know, they sort of are, our communities have been impacted by 40 years of sort of failed policies that haven't invested in the people who need investment. So I think most of my work and most of my time is spent on what does it mean to get to that root cause in terms of people's sense of safety, dignity, and justice, and you know, sort of hit at those intersections, and try to do all my work based off of, you know, does it hit at the intersections of race, class, and gender, and that's sort of been the focus of, you know, my legislative career. It's been the focus of my life since I become an organizer.
Thank you so much for both that work and that synthesis of what's on your mind these days. You talked about the intersection of so many issues. I know that you've been on the forefront of making those connections, especially around the environment. What are you seeing in your district regarding energy costs and the extreme weather that we went through here, but that Texas really made front of mind for so many people?
Yeah, so my district is all on the lakefront. What that means is, you know, we've had lakefront erosion, and we have a disparity of who's getting the resources that they need from lakefront erosion. Combine that with the fact that I have the southeast side, which is an environmental justice community that constantly struggles to be able to have clean air, be able to play in their playground, be able to drink their water. And so having a lakefront based district, having environmental justice communities on top of having working class communities, what I know is that people right now are struggling economically. They're struggling when it comes to the crisis of systemic racism, and then of course struggling when it comes to a public health crisis. And when you combine all those struggles that we've seen in sort of recent crises with the long-term environmental justice crises, what we see is that communities are desperately in need of people to fight for them, whether it's in Springfield or DC, to make sure that they have what they need, so that they can at least drink the water that they have, they can breathe the air that they have, they can enjoy the lakefront that they live near. And so I think that's sort of what I've seen in terms of the community. It's sort of the conversations I've had with people. And at the end of the day, it's making sure that when we think about where we invest our resources, where we invest our time, is to make sure that every community, no matter the zip code, is made whole. And it's sort of been the focus, and what I've seen in terms of talking to people, what it's been like for last, for a few decades at this point.
Yeah, there's so many systemic issues, but it feels like perhaps this can be the moment of change. I'm cautiously optimistic about our future. And then I think that there might be some tools that can move us towards the kind of future where clean energy is something that we can see outside, in our communities versus hear about on television. And with that in mind, what does Illinois need to prioritize to move the state to a clean and secure energy future? Are some of the same problems that we faced also solvable with the clean energy economy?
Yeah, so we have the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which has a sort of key part to it, which is an equitable workforce development plan, which is sort of a form of a green bank. It's not, specifically a bank, but it's the idea of making sure that we can drive investment to Black businesses, to Black workers, and then combine that. So you take that investment, you take it to the workforce development space, and you combine in the fact that there's going to be even more dollars coming in federally, and we can at least sort of take smaller rooftop solar like projects, combine it with larger green manufacturing, and what we would be able to get is a job, sort of jobs get the economy spurring, so that Black workers and Black small businesses are able to benefit and to grow. And I think that's what that's what we need. That's what we need to focus on. And so it's not only just about making sure that you have a good solar program on top of your roof. It's making sure that those who are putting that, installing it, putting that together, are also people coming from the community. On top of the fact that, when you add in a larger scale manufacturing effort to it, that is based off of being clean and green, that the workers coming from there are getting those jobs and having good jobs. So not only that, they can then have the home that is also clean energy focused. So it's sort of trying to hit at different layers, from 30,000 feet to 15,000 feet to right on the ground, in terms of large scale projects, large scale policy, and large scale efforts to bring equity, especially to the south side of Chicago.
Thank you so much for that summary. And in our program, we're going to continue to discuss all of these implications, CEJA, policy, things that people at home can do for energy efficiency and other matters. I guess that my last couple of questions are, what is the state government doing to protect our residents from the kind of power failure, the grid failures that have been in the news across the country and resulted in so much power failure in Texas? What's happening here?
Yeah, that's a big question, particularly because grid management is pretty complicated. But the best way to put it is, because it's a bit of state government, it's also pseudo government. The main part is if we can move away. There's so many layers here, because
Layperson's version.
Yeah, so the best way to put it is if we can move away from dated infrastructure, so we can update our infrastructure. We use large capital dollars to make sure that we are updating the infrastructure of our state. Combine that with the fact that if we are, one of the issues that happened in Texas wasn't just the fact that the grid collapsed, it was the fact that you had that happening with hospitals. So areas around the hospitals were fine, but people who weren't near the hospital were impacted, and then they're experiencing some trauma and some pain where they have to go. They go to right now during a pandemic, an overcrowded hospital system. When we know we have a healthcare gap, particularly on the south side of Chicago, you combine that with if we have an infrastructure gap, and you combine that with a housing gap, and you combine that with an infrastructure gap in terms of plumbing, you can have a wholesale disaster. There's one thing that we have in Illinois is a strong, infrastructure program that's been going on for quite some time. We have organizations that have been fighting to improve our, sort of environmental justice and use of power standards. And I think there's just still some more work to do on all those fronts. So it's a complicated way of saying this, is that we're in a better shape than Texas, for sure. I mean, we're used to a tough winter, right, where Texas isn't. But on top of that, there's always going to be more work that needs to happen. And I think it's a combination of things that require the state and as well as the federal government to protect our grid and our critical infrastructures.
Well, thank you so much for that overview from your perspective. It will take all of us working together to get the kind of future that our kids deserve. I'm always reminded that we're stewards for the next generation, and we're grateful to stewards such as yourself in Springfield, looking out for all of the ways that our issues intersect, and how to have a healthier environment. And I love all the things that you said about dignity and justice as well. What excites you, and where can folks find out more from your office about your initiatives and the work that you care about?
Yeah, I mean, what excites me most is the fact that I like talking to people. I come from an organizing background. I was a community organizer before I was a state senator. And when I talk about safety, justice, and dignity, what I mean is our environmental justice communities are tied up to our racial justice communities, and they're tied up to a history of, disinvestment, a history of overwork and very little power in your workplace, a history of being a dumping ground for a select few. And to me, what excites me about my work is to say, okay, we're going to change that. That what it means to make a community whole is that you have a roof over your head, you have a good job, you have a school, you can drink your water, you can breathe air, and you can afford to have food on your table. Everyone deserves that. It doesn't matter where you live in the state of Illinois or where you live in this country, you deserve that. And I think what excites me is that we're seeing us as a community organized to demand to have those things happen. And so that's my main thing here is that whether you live in South Shore or you live in Evanston, you should be able to enjoy your lakefront. Whether you live in Lakeview or you live in South Chicago, you should be able to turn on the tap and drink the water and play in the park and be able to breathe the air. And whether you live in Bronzeville or you live way down in Carlinville, Illinois, you should be able to know that you have a good job with a good future. And I think that's what we're fighting for. For folks who want to, get to learn more about what we do and, especially my office, they can visit my website at www.senatorrobertpeters.com. And you can, we have a form there if you ever need to reach out to my office for anything. I always say that I represent the district, but when I push that green button, it impacts the whole state. So my job is to make sure that the district is represented, but to make sure that whatever I'm doing in terms of voting and what I'm fighting for, that I know it also impacts people who may not live directly in my community. So that's my little story.
Thank you, Senator Peters, for sharing your perspective. Joining us now are two great guests. Jeremy Bryant, Senior Associate of Community Relations at Elevate, and Sarah Moskowitz, Deputy Director at Citizens Utility Board, we like to say CUB. Thanks for joining us for this premiere episode of Elevating Stories of Climate Equity. Sarah Moskowitz, I'll come to you first, one of Elevate's longtime allies, another member of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. Tell us a little bit about your work and your biggest concern in this moment.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Elevate. Thank you, Jeremy, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be back on CAN TV. CUB actually used to have a call-in show on CAN TV like 15 years ago that I was on, so this is super fun for me. Citizens Utility Board, or CUB, as you noted, is a nonprofit consumer advocacy group that specializes in utility issues. So we work across the state of Illinois, representing utility ratepayers before the Illinois Commerce Commission and the courts in Springfield. We tried to get better consumer-friendly laws passed. And more these days, we've been looking at ways to kind of move the Illinois energy economy towards 100% clean renewable energy in a way that saves consumers money, which is definitely possible if we do it right. So it's a really exciting time. However, there are a lot of problems that exist now and a lot of problems on the horizon. Of course, we are a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has just wrought havoc on people's source of livelihood across the state, if not the world. And so we're encountering lots of people who, for many of them, for whom the first time in their lives, they're encountering issues paying their bills. And so a lot of education has to be done around making sure people are aware and taking advantage of the programs that exist to assist them, because there are some good programs in place that we've put a lot of effort into securing for folks. Now it's just a matter of getting them to learn about them and take advantage of them. So that is a very immediate concern right now. But of course, the climate crisis is an immediate concern. We're trying to get legislation passed, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, that will bring, it'll put Illinois on track to achieve a clean energy future. And then on the horizon right after that, we're looking at some big decarbonization fights that are coming up, especially here in the city of Chicago, where we're on the verge of a gas affordability crisis. So it's a whole lot. I could talk about this stuff for hours, as you can probably tell. So, but yeah, there's a lot going on.
A lot on your
Yeah.
mind. And a good opportunity to get some of that factual information out there. Jeremy Bryant, old friend, tell us about your work and your biggest concern in this moment.
Hey, Sylvia, Sarah, nice to be here this evening. My name is Jeremy Bryant. I work for Elevate. I am a senior associate with the outreach team. And Elevate is no stranger to Chicago. Matter of fact, we're not only in Chicago, we're in a few parts across the country. But our goal is to bring affordable utilities to everyone, everywhere. We feel that everyone is deserving of not just a affordable bill, but also a good quality of life. So we're also about promoting equity to those residents that need it most, those who have been disenfranchised and removed from the conversation. One of the things that concerns me most at this moment is COVID-19, of course, is weighing heavily on everyone's mind, but it's being at home, working remotely, having high energy costs, being at home, not knowing, with many people's jobs being somewhat shaky and income being tight, not knowing where to turn and where to go to get actual help for the bills, for food, etc. And so that's one thing that weighs heavily on my mind, making sure that the consumers are actually getting information about resources that are available to them during this difficult time.
Well, they've turned to the right place this evening. I'm going to ask Sarah, what are you hearing from the people that you work with across the state? What are some of the common questions or concerns about extreme weather and energy costs, Sarah?
Well, of course, for the first time in my professional career, I had people who've never taken any interest in what I do for a living approaching me to ask about grid reliability and energy costs. Of course, that's because of what we all saw happen in Texas last month. So, Texas is a unique state when it comes to how they operate their grid. And so a lot of the folks that I talked to in Illinois were really concerned about the situation here in the Midwest, and could what they saw in Texas happen here. And luckily, there are a lot of ways in which our system differs from what happened in Texas. But still, it was quite cold here as well. And we too saw some soaring energy costs, especially real-time prices for electricity, that gave folks who were on, say, ComEd's hourly pricing or Ameren's PowerSmart pricing programs some concern. Now, of course, those prices have come right back down as we expected them to do, and we still think those are fantastic problems, but we've been out there for years promoting those programs, and then suddenly people saw unprecedentedly high charges as a result of some of the strains on the grid and some of the strains on the gas distribution system, which kind of had a ripple effect onto energy bills. So of course, when it's cold, bills go up and people get concerned about that. And there are still a lot of scams out there, of course, even though there are laws in place that are better than ever protecting people from unscrupulous alternative energy suppliers. We still see them out there. We'll still hear about them calling folks. Even though they're not supposed to be going door to door right now, they're still using the phone. I'm still getting stuff in the mail. And so people are still getting confused by these offers of clean energy or cheap energy, and have to do some digging to uncover the fact that those are actually ripoffs.
Well, I'm going to ask Jeremy, what are 3 ways that consumers can increase energy efficiency to bring down those scary bills?
Well, one thing they can do is go through their home and find out if they have any of those old round incandescent light bulbs. They want to go through the house, take those out right away and replace them with an LED bulb. Those bulbs don't give off heat and they don't draw as much on the grid. So like we mentioned already, people are at home, not just the adults, but also the children. And I know that a lot of people have a bad habit of not turning off lights. So if they're going to be on, let's make sure that we have the proper light bulbs on installed. Another thing that they can do is also replace their older mercury thermostat or even their programmable thermostat with what is called a smart thermostat. And these come in a variety of forms from different makers like Ecobee and Nest. But these smart thermostats can actually be controlled from anywhere that you might have to travel to, so that they actually can control by your mobile device. And then they also learn your habits, so that if you're away from home, the thermostat will actually know that and know to actually lower the temperature. And then when you arrive back at home, the thermostat will activate to a temperature because it's recognizing people activity in the home. So these are things that we can actually have in our homes to actually reduce our energy cost. If you want to go to the contractor grade level, you can also do what is called air sealing around your doors and windows and add insulation in your basement and attic. And that will also have a tremendous impact on those bills.
Are there any programs or services that help people defray those costs or provide those thermostats and things for them?
Absolutely. Here in Illinois and the Chicago area, we have a company called ComEd. That's the utility company, and ComEd actually has programs for not only residential, but also nonprofit and businesses, where they will come out and do an energy assessment and also provide you with equipment that will actually help you lower your bills. There's also, of course, Elevate, who is an administrator of various programs that will actually help to enroll you in through the utility company, so you don't have to go to an alternate supplier that Sarah had actually mentioned, and worry about maybe getting a high spike in your energy costs at some point. And Elevate is happy to help people enroll in these programs or show them where to go, even if they're even having a hardship, perhaps with a prior bill, and how to get that taken care of and navigate these hard times.
I'm just going to ask you, if you don't know how to do a lot of technological stuff, can you figure out how to use those thermostats?
You can.
Very
It is not
good.
that, it is user friendly.
Yeah, so you don't have to call all the kids in to help you. Sarah, I want to come back to the disinformation that can be out there. Extreme weather, energy costs, failures. What's your biggest fear about what people have heard, especially Sarah, around renewables and some of the misinformation around not just solar, but wind after Texas?
Yeah, well, of course, what happened in Texas was quickly politicized, unfortunately, and so some early interviews included politicians from Texas blaming failure of wind turbines. And while wind underperformed during the Texas energy crisis, everything underperformed. But the biggest underperformers were actually the fossil fuel power generators. So wind works perfectly fine in Illinois because our turbines are weatherized, and the situation in Texas was that they weren't properly weatherized. So this was just another opportunity to take political hits at renewable energy, which unfortunately is kind of the way things go, but it is pretty silly. I do want to mention one other thing while I can, since I've got you and I've got a camera on me, I can't resist. Another piece of misinformation out there, this is much more immediate, close to home. A friend of mine just told me about this last week. He got a call from someone promising to provide him with free solar panels. That's really nice sounding, and that is that we like solar. We want people to take advantage of that, but there is no such thing as free solar panels. Unless you are on some kind of special program that's income qualified. These guys that are calling you are actually going to be selling you a solar lease. So while there's kind of big picture in the news, political misinformation happening around renewable energy, there is also coming at individual consumers here in Illinois, a lot of misinformation from, unfortunately, unscrupulous marketers trying to use that renewable energy shtick as a hook. And so for people who are curious about tapping into the promise of renewable energy for their own home, whether it's through rooftop solar or through maybe subscribing to a community solar program, Cub is a resource. We have a website that we update every day, go into a lot of detail about your options. And if you still have questions, we have a hotline too that folks can call.
Well, you've been a longtime ally and advocate for consumers, so you're a trusted source. I know other parts of Elevate are administrators of Illinois Solar for All, so there's some great information out there. But speaking of questions, I think we've got a few on the line. So where's our first caller, guys?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for your call.
Hi, thanks for taking it, and thanks to Sarah and Jeremy for all this helpful information that you've provided tonight. I was really interested in hearing your thoughts on energy costs related to extreme weather. And it also made me curious about what you've seen on the ground in terms of rising energy bills due to COVID-19 and the fact that so many more people have been at home using energy at home much more than they had been prior, resulting in higher energy bills. And if there's any programs or initiatives that people can look to help them shoulder the cost.
Thank you so much, caller. We appreciate your calling in. And I heard rising energy costs, staying at home, COVID. What can people do? Jeremy, I'll come to you first.
Hello, caller. One thing that you can do is definitely enroll yourself in ComEd's program. If you're in the ComEd territory, it's called hourly pricing. That's one thing I would suggest to do. And then another thing that I would suggest to do is make sure that if you're at home, like you say, unplug appliances that you aren't using. Perhaps purchase what is called a smart power strip, which is a power strip that you can plug multiple items in, but they will not draw on the grid as they would if they were just plugged directly into the regular outlet in the wall, unless it's actually on and running. That's what we call vampire voltage, where it's just drawing on the grid without you even knowing about it. Those power strips are readily available at any hardware store. And then I would also strongly suggest that maybe you make sure that you upgrade your thermostat to one of the smart thermostats I mentioned, so that you can make sure that your thermostat isn't working. I mean, not your thermostat, but your heating system is not working harder than what it needs to be when you're at home. And always, of course, wear warmer clothes if you can.
Well, thank you. And I know we have so many devices in my house. My granddaughter's got a tablet. Everybody's got a tablet, a phone, a thing, streaming. There's another question about how people in disadvantaged communities deal with extreme weather situations in the context of COVID. And Sarah, I'll come to you for that.
Well, everything that Jeremy said was great advice, and it's something that I want to underline. When COVID struck, a lot of stakeholders at the state came together to try to work out some assistance for folks who were finding themselves unable to pay their bills. And in fact, we made quite a bit of progress. It was, according to our general counsel, it was quite an ordeal coming to an agreement, but we hammered it out and the state approved it. Unprecedented package of benefits for people who are having trouble paying their bills. So there's new monies made available for folks to help pay off their unpaid balances. There are rules in place requiring the utilities to offer people longer deferred payment arrangements. So if you have a big bill, you can't pay it all at once, call the utility and they can chop it up into little pieces and you can pay it off over a long amount of time, over a longer amount of time than you could under normal regulations. But the key to that is you really have to communicate with your utility company. And I feel like such a scold saying that because I know what it's like to call these guys. I know what it's like when you're behind on your bills and you don't want to even think about it. You see that disconnect notice come in the mail, it's pink and you're like, if I don't open this, maybe it's not going to happen. Fortunately, that's not how it works. It will happen. And really, it will help so much if you face this head on, call up your utility and tell them you are experiencing a hardship and what can they do for you. Because right now, the chances are very good that they can do something for you. We want people to take advantage of this. For the first time ever here in the state of Illinois, you don't have to have a social security number to take advantage of LIHEAP benefits, which is fantastic. That's a great benefit. But again, people don't know this. So we're really trying to get the word out. Once you're disconnected by your utility, it is much more difficult to work with them.
So we want this to happen. You want this conversation. You want to tell them you're experiencing hardship. You can just quote us, experiencing hardship, before you're cut off. I think we've got another caller. Our number is 3. This is Elevating Stories of Climate Equity, our Extreme Weather and Energy Costs edition. Caller, what's your question?
Hi, I heard you say something about an assistance program is available. I was wondering what it is and where I can find out more about it.
And which program were you asking about?
Sarah was saying something about an assistant program that they might be available. I was trying to see more information about that.
Sure. So we've got a variety. So we'll pick help with energy bills. We'll recap that, and we'll also recap maybe our pricing. So Sarah, I'll stay with you, and then we'll see what Jeremy can add. Thank you, caller.
Yeah, if you go online and just Google Help Illinois Families, I believe it's helpillinoisfamilies.org. That's a website that the state's put together where you can actually apply for LIHEAP benefits. But
And
aside,
say what LIHEAP is for people.
LIHEAP, it's LIHEAP. That is Low Income Home
And be
Energy
still,
Assistance
Sarah, because the
Program.
wind's getting you. There you go.
It's LIHEAP is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Programs. Pass it on.
Thank you. And that will help you with your energy bill.
Correct.
Jeremy, what other programs can you mention? And perhaps you can share your resource number as well.
Absolutely. There's a variety of programs that we can possibly point you in the direction that Elevate either administers for your pricing for your electricity or otherwise. I would strongly encourage you to contact me at 833-204-1992. And we'd be myself and my colleagues would be more than happy to call you and talk to you about the pricing programs that would be special for you, or any programs in general that you might find useful as you navigate COVID-19 and whatever else you might be going through.
And we're talking with some Chicagoans today, but these resources are available for people around the state. I think we've got another caller. Welcome. What's your question?
Hi, I have a question about property damage. I had a lot of ice and snow on my roof this past winter. Are there any programs providing relief for homeowners that incurred any costs related to that, or any advice for us in general?
Oh, thank you. That ice was something. When all of that snow melted, I saw ice slicks that I'd never seen before. Jeremy, do you have any advice for homeowners, or is that a Sarah question?
So far as the ice dams and things of that nature that caused a lot of damage, in addition to documenting it with pictures and contacting your insurance company, you're also, again, I would encourage you to contact myself or my colleagues at Elevate. And that number is 833-204-1992. That is our community resource hotline. There are some assistance programs throughout the city of Chicago that are helping individuals recover from the recent winter storm, because it was declared a somewhat of an emergency for the state of Illinois that we had recently.
Thank you. Sarah, do you have any input on that?
Unfortunately, beyond what my friends from Minnesota say about ice dams, I don't know as much about it as Jeremy does. So.
All right. Well, we've got it rolling here. Let's take another call. Caller, what's your question? And thanks for joining us this evening.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. So I guess my question is more broad. I've been listening to the conversation about equity, and I would like to know more generally what you think can be done to kind of raise awareness, frankly, in communities of color about some of these issues. I drive a Prius. I'm a vegan, and I, try to talk to my friends about, the carbon footprint, and I feel like it's just not top of mind. And I understand that there are other issues that we interpret as perhaps more pressing, but I feel like this is just as important, and that environmental justice is important and equity is important, but I feel like that's not on as many people's radar as perhaps it should be. So I'd love to know, what we can do or what is being done to just get this more top of mind for people.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to be one of those witnesses to say, before turning it over to the experts, Black folks care about the environment. We care about equity. We may use different terms. We may talk about it in terms of the way it impacts us differently, but we are the first to feel the brunt of the bad air, the unhealthy homes. And so I'm delighted that there's a caller who wants us to help spread that word. Sarah, what would you share? How are we getting the word out about equity?
Well, a lot of that is around listening. I mentioned the Clean Energy Jobs Act, CEJA for short, which is the legislation that we're trying to get passed right now. We've been trying to get passed for a while, though it's looking good. It's looking better than ever this spring. The way that legislation, that draft legislation came about was through a series of listening sessions throughout the state. So I think it's important, especially for an organization like mine that's not a community organization, we're a statewide organization. We want to really kind of respect where folks are coming from. So we're not just going to come at you like, you need to do this and that and this and that. We really want to hear where people's concerns are at. So that's kind of part of what keeps CUB relevant, is that we have a really robust grassroots program where we go out, well, in better times, we go out in the field and meet people in their churches and their community or centers and what have you. But also we have a hotline that people call. And so when we will start with where they're at, like I'm having trouble paying my bill, et cetera. But then from there, once we've taken care of those initial issues, we can mention that there's some other stuff on the horizon. Like maybe you've taken advantage of an efficiency program, but you wish it could go farther. Well, let's try to get some legislation passed to make it go farther. That can actually help bring jobs into communities that need them as well.
Well, and I know that one of my colleagues likes to say we want people to see the benefits of the clean energy economy, not just on television and not just, in other communities, but we want them to see those jobs and those services right outside their door, right in the daycare where they're, the home daycare where their kids are being cared for. So there's a lot of work that we can do. I'm going to ask, we've got a couple minutes left. It's been an exciting first show. So I want to ask you, Sarah, what are you excited about and how can people reach you? And then I'll give Jeremy his last words as well.
Great. Well, that is actually a perfect segue because I am excited about how the discussion around energy equity has really come to the forefront. The concerns about affordability and energy burden, which used to be, I felt like we were just a small group kind of clamoring off to the side while everyone else was worried about other stuff. Because perhaps of the events of the past year, those issues have really come to the forefront in a way that I think is a fantastic opportunity. So we have a great issue. We have big problems, but there's a lot of attention on it, and now could be our moment.
Thank you. And Jeremy, you just have a chance to say goodbye and give us your number again.
Okay, so if you want to reach me or talk about any of the things you heard tonight, you can reach me at 818-33204-1992. This was fun. It was a pleasure.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you. We've got these experts in our community. We're happy to be here with you. Tell your friends about this program. We want to hear from you and we want to serve you. So thanks for joining us for the premiere episode of Elevating Stories of Climate Equity. A big thanks to our guests on this episode, Ann Evans, Ann McKibben, Jeremy Bryant, Sarah Moskowitz, Illinois State Senator Robert Peters. Thanks to you, the callers, our partners here at CAN TV, and our outreach partners at the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. Climate change is real, but the solutions to this crisis can also provide jobs, benefits, and services for people who are often left behind. Clean energy is for everyone. I'm Sylvia Ewing. Thanks for watching. See you next time on April 22nd for the next episode of Elevating Stories of Climate Equity.